Shade Tree Committee with the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Super. So welcome, I am Eileen Brett. I am your chair for this evening, and we'll dive right into the new business. So 400 South Wayne, I am assuming.
Before we go into that, can I mention one thing? Usually we start the meeting approving the minutes. We got away from that last month, and you sometimes, Trish, sometimes you have the minutes with the packets. You sent them out?
We did them last month. I did not finish the minutes from last month.
Right.
We reviewed them the month before, last month.
Okay, so
They weren't in the packets this month.
so we can approve them for, what's this?
I think basically we're going to have to wait and do an offline approval, or we can approve
We'll
them at the
do it next
meeting.
month. We'll have both
Yeah, we
next
can approve them
month.
all at once next time.
Yeah, that's fine.
Can't do it
Okay.
all. Okay.
Now, I assume you are here for 400 South Wayne.
Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
welcome.
This is our second time here. The last time we were here, if you guys remember, we were missing several trees from the plan. So we sent the engineer back out to revisit the site and add trees. Now, what Matt and I met earlier tonight, and we reviewed the plan, and there's still a couple trees that were missing. I have them highlighted here, and I've marked up the plan. So what I'm going for tonight would be a conditional approval based on these added trees and additional replacement trees that we're proposing to do. So on this plan, you'll notice there's an 18-inch spruce on the back that was missed, and a 12 to 15-inch ash and holly over on the driveway side. It's a little blurry, but I don't know if you guys can clear that up, but if you can see it on here, it'll show you what was missed.
Okay, now what we don't have that one we don't have either of those, right?
No, you have, the first, page 2 is what you have, and these ones marked here are the ones that were marked by Matt and I as trees that were missed. So right on the corner of the back of the property where the existing house is, and it is an additional 18-inch spruce that is going to have to be removed. And then on the back of the driveway are 2 trees, an ash and a holly, both about 12 to 15-inch caliber, that will need to be removed. The rest of the trees on the site, some of which are in poor condition, are not really affecting what we're looking to do here with the construction of the new house. So we are going to look at those separately with the arborist to determine if they are damaged or hazardous.
Sorry.
So what we're looking at specifically is the ones that are in our building area that will be an issue that need to come down. Does that all make sense?
Not sure about that.
Okay.
So I can see on sheet 2 of your drawings, I
Yep.
can see the trees that are marked out to be removed. And I think you're saying that there are some additional trees that aren't shown
There's 3 additional trees that aren't shown that need to be removed.
that need to be removed. Okay, and can you just list those again?
Yep, we have an 18-inch spruce here on the back
Write that here.
portion of the house corner.
Okay, okay,
And then at the back of the driveway here, right at the edge, is a 12 to 15-inch ash and holly. They're growing right next to each other. There's also another tree that's covered in vines that just looks like a garbage tree. We weren't able to determine what it was. Matt didn't know either. So we are proposing to plant trees in replacement of these on the tree replacement plan. That's further back in your sheets.
Okay, so have you changed have you made those changes?
Yes, we've changed the formula. I've marked it up.
Can you tell us which sheet the replacement table is on?
Sheet 4 of 10.
Madam Chair, if I may make a suggestion?
Certainly.
If the applicant could perhaps walk us through on sheet 5 of 10, which shows the tree protection, the proposed house, maybe then we get a better idea of what will be. And you could point out those trees, because we're looking at an existing conditions plan and trying to compare that to the proposed, which is really what we're all looking at. So if I could make
Yeah.
that suggestion, that if you could go to sheet 5 of 10 and walk the Shade Tree Commission through that, please?
Yep. So 5 of 10 shows the tree protection around the house, and there are several trees around the property, so we are really isolating the construction area with the tree protection fence, as shown here with the dark line.
Where would the trees that were missed be on this sheet, sir?
The trees that were missing?
Yes.
The trees that were missing were right on the back of the driveway, and these were the ones that will be coming down.
Right.
Matt also made a recommendation to add some tree protection to this 26-inch spruce near the front of the driveway, just because it is our main access to the site. While we do have a driveway there, we can get tree protection in and then even expand the driveway a little bit over to the side, the right side as you're pulling in.
Okay, so I think now can we go back to
Sure.
page 4 and we'll look at the replacement table?
Yeah.
And can you tell us your assumptions? So you have 3 additional trees coming out that aren't marked on the drawing.
That's right. So we've added 7 additional Norway spruces to the Conestoga Road edge as a landscape buffer.
I just have a question first, though. For the 3 trees that you're removing, you said one was 18 inches, one is 15 to 18 inches. What did you assume the so-called garbage tree is?
I'm sorry, we had, those other 3 were in the 12 to 15-inch caliber range.
Okay, gotcha.
So we've added 7 here to account for those additional trees that were coming down. And those are highlighted here. The other trees that we're taking down for the site are noted here specifically in various areas. It was Matt's recommendation that the dawn redwoods shown here be replaced with something else.
I think 2 would be fine.
2, and
Luke.
so just because they get so large, so he was recommending that we take 2 of these out and replace them with a different species, which we're open to doing. I apologize for the changes here.
That's okay.
We relied on our engineer to make the correct changes in the field, and it appears things were still missed.
And I was on the site, and so when Luke and I went over this, like, I'm comfortable that he's going to give us another rendering, but I'm comfortable with what he's doing, because I sort of think I know the site pretty well.
Okay.
And I just think that it should be, maybe we should think about like a possibly conditional approval based on getting the rendering correct.
Yeah, I'm
I
definitely open.
hate to hold it up for.
Yeah. No, I'm definitely open to that. I'm just trying to understand, like, the tree replacement table on sheet 4, is that accurate now? Does that include the 3 trees
No,
that are
so
missing, or that needs to be
No,
marked up?
we would update
Marked
that
up.
table,
Okay, got
mark
it.
that up with the new trees that we're
Okay.
proposing to plant,
Okay.
and we would adjust the redwoods accordingly.
Is the construction, all the access coming up the driveway?
It would be coming up the existing driveway.
So you will put the, around the spruce then?
Yeah, we would definitely put the
And you'll
protection there.
Bring it all the way up the driveway, I guess?
Yeah, I think we'd connect it all the way to the piece that's going to run here and
Okay.
run it back
And-
back down.
And that's a new patio going in?
No, there's no patio going
No
in.
patio.
Nope.
What's this?
Where did you see that?
It's
Page,
on sheet 5?
5?
Let's see. This here?
Yeah.
That's the topsoil pile.
Oh, the topsoil one.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Madam Chairman, I do have a question for the applicant, if I may.
Sure.
So in the southeast portion of the house, there's a swale, there's a contour line, 450 proposed, and if you scale that off, that's about 7 feet from the center of the tree. So it's a 22-inch maple. So chances are, without seeing, so we don't require our plans to show the actual canopy. So my concern is grading to within 7 feet of the center line of the tree, which is most likely going to put you into the roots or at least in the drip line. So I would like to suggest to the commission that if the applicant can save the tree, that's fantastic. but perhaps in their compensatory table, they add the appropriate compensatory trees regardless if the tree is able to be kept or not. And that way, if it does decline or is determined that it would come down, the compensatory trees are already on the project.
I'd be open to that.
The only other concern I have is now you're saying all 6 of the new replacements are going to be Norway spruce, is that correct?
That's kind of just what we were spitballing earlier. We're open to other
None of
species.
them account?
That could change.
Yeah, well, the formula calls for, some canopies there, right?
Which ones?
All those 6, well, how many the new ones are taken out?
We have, so right now we have 7 sugar maples going in. We've got 8 Norway spruces plus the additional 7, so that'll be 15. And
Yeah,
then
so-
we have 5 dawn redwoods that we're going to take 2 of those out and replace them with something else in the formula.
A couple of those should be canopy trees.
Okay. We can make that change.
Yeah.
So
So it'll
instead
get
of
a
7,
little heavy
maybe
on
we
the
do
Norway spruces
three
there.
canopies and 4 spruces?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then per the proposal that Steve just made, you would be adding 3 more trees in case the 22-inch Norway maple does
Doesn't
not
make it.
survive the construction, right?
That's fair.
Okay. Any other questions?
You want to make the motion?
Yeah. My motion would be to approve, providing the trees, the 3 trees that aren't shown that are going to be removed are added, providing the trees to replace them are shown on the table, providing 3 other trees are added in case the 22 Norway maple does not make it. Did I miss anything?
Yeah, 2 of those new replacements are going to be canopy trees.
Yes, change the 2 of the dawn redwoods to 2 canopy trees.
No, the Norway
The Norway
spruces.
spruces.
The 3, okay,
Yeah. You were at the Shade Tree Committee.
gotcha. Understood.
Okay.
So Madam Chair, the applicant's going to revise the plans. They'll be all brought up to snuff based on what the commission's voting on. And then you'll resubmit that to staff. We'll review to make sure that everything is included. And I do need to notify the Shade Tree Commission, the applicant. It was brought to our attention from a resident that conceivably this project could have to go through land development. We don't know yet. It's in the hands of our solicitor. So at this point, the applicant will move through on the grading permit process, but no grading permit will be issued until, as time our solicitor tells us that, yes, it's a single lot going under grading permit. If it turns out it has to go through land development, we'll address that with the applicant.
Okay. That sounds fine. Okay. Motion to approve. Aye? Aye. Great. Thanks a lot, Luke.
Thank you.
And then I believe we have a public comment. Okay, sorry. Okay. Okay.
Hi, yeah,
Yeah.
you're actually okay because of what I'm going to be up here for, not having it before the vote. Steve, I'm Baron Gemmer. I live across the street from 400 South Wayne. As Steve mentioned, I brought to the township's attention this issue. I know, Luke, I don't have any problem in concept of what he's trying to do, but being as this is the only public meeting, I wanted to formally object to the plan based upon issues that are actually outside your purview, but this is the only chance to get that on the record.
Okay.
Again, just bear with me for a couple minutes. The 2 issues involved would be disturbance of steep slopes, even though he's not building on them. And actually, I think that was partially what Steve was alluding to with the swale, but also based upon 28112, which is that same section. This, because of the size of the lot and the existence of steep slopes, would need to go through the saldo process, which would give it a much higher visibility of the residents, because no residents got notified for this. I just happened to find out about the last meeting because I was on the website. And this property does have a history where neighbors actually did have to file suit against the prior full owner. I assume Luke is an equitable owner for this. So it shouldn't affect your vote because the zoning is outside of what you would be reviewing, but seeing as it's the only public meeting, I felt I needed to come here to reserve my rights for later, should that be the case. So I thank you for your time.
I'm sorry, I can't quite say I understood what the issue is. Is it steep slopes? Am I correct?
So Mr. Gemmer brought forth a couple of items that could possibly, steep slopes being one, that basically we've taken it to our solicitor to determine the validity of what Mr. Gemmer is putting forth. If the solicitor deems that it does not have to go to land development, the applicant will submit the plans to staff, we'll make sure it conforms, and then it continues to the grading permit process. If Mr. Gemmer is correct and our solicitor concurs, then it would go through land development, which is a whole different process, planning commission, perhaps zoning hearing board, and ultimately the Board of Commissioners. And if anything changes, it would once again be back before you.
Okay.
So what
Great,
Mr.
thank
Gemmer is
you.
saying is for grading permits, there is no public notification. That's not a requirement of a grading permit. So he's making sure he's on the record publicly on a televised recorded meeting.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay. Next on the agenda, 108 Cumberland Place. Yeah, and I understand you're not removing any trees, so maybe if you can just introduce yourself, tell us about your project, and we'll be most interested in the egress to the construction site and your tree protection fence for existing trees.
Okay, great. So I'm Chris Doherty, and I'm with Momney Incorporated. And yeah, our project is 108 Cumberland Place. It's just a pool addition, adding, for zoning purposes, 222 square feet, so no stormwater is required. And we're here just because of the excavation. Basically, the site right now it has a slanted backyard. Slopes in one direction. We're kind of just excavating, using that fill, keeping it on site, and grading a more flat area in the backyard. There is a row of spruce trees down on the southern section of the property, which we are providing tree protection for within the drip lines, or at the edges of the drip lines. And we're not expecting our grading to affect the trees either.
Okay. This one is pretty clean compared to everything that we see, so are there any questions? Yeah.
I think this is just here for soil, right?
For two reasons, the quantity of dirt being moved,
Right.
and they're also working within 50 foot of a tree line, but it's strictly more or less a formality before this commission.
Great, motion to approve?
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, 120 Ashwood Road.
Hi, how are you?
You are in a very similar situation, it looks like.
Just trying to keep it as easy as possible, right?
Okay.
Okay. So basically what we're doing at the property is we're installing a pool. We have some retaining walls in the front and the back. We have an addition going onto the home. Along, let's see, I guess along the south line here, there's a row of newly planted arborvitae that was put in very recently. So we have proposed tree protection along that entire row.
Can you, I'm sorry.
yeah.
Can you introduce yourself,
Oh, I'm
please?
sorry, Greg DeSantis from Benucci Masonry and Structures. So, sorry about that. As far as the other trees, we have one tree in the front yard here that's going to be within 50 foot of the addition, which we are showing tree protection all the way around. There is some trees that are not necessarily on this property, but on the neighboring property.
Yeah.
So what we did show was tree protection just along that entire access coming in. They're not labeled on the plan per se, but they're just, we know that the trees are there within 50 foot, so we just figured put tree protection up.
And your egress pattern, how you're getting to the site?
We're going to be coming off the driveway here. So at the end of the drive, this is the driveway, coming up the driveway. We're going to be coming, we're going to have a construction access here. We're going to be coming in through this way to access the site. You can see this line here is the line that limits the disturbance. this entire backyard to be able to get over to this side. We are accessing the addition foundation, digging for that. We're not coming in the front yard. That's just a massive slope we can't get up. So we'll be coming up through the backyard there. And we have retaining wall. So basically the sequence of us building would be, we would be coming in, excavating the foundation first and kind of working our way out, then the pool, and then on our way out of the job, we have to build these retaining walls and steps because there is a slope coming towards the driveway that we're going to be leveling off. So there's a retaining wall that goes all the way around the edge of the driveway here. And then on our way out, we'll be constructing these front walls here that are not in any, close to any trees at all. And it's landlocked, driveway, sidewalk, house, front walkway. There's no trees within that area. But that's just because there's just not a steep slope, but there is a hill in the front yard. We're going to be tearing that off with just landscape walls.
That looks okay to me. I don't see any trees.
I didn't see any kind of problem.
Yeah.
The only tree that I would say, but it would be in the front here, and I believe it's an umbrella. It's a large umbrella pine. You know, that's the only one that's really worth noting near the construction.
And you'll keep away from the back end of the property?
Back here?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
Because
nothing back there that we're
There's
touching.
a really nice ginkgo tree.
Yeah, they're all newly
neighboring
planted
property.
too. Yeah.
Oh, no,
Oh,
the
I'm
neighboring
sorry.
property. Really nice one. It's not on the plan.
Okay,
I'm
yeah,
familiar with the
we're,
property.
like, you can see the limits of disturbance here
Yeah.
in this line. Yeah, we're not gonna be heading back
Just
there
as
at all.
long as you keep it.
Yeah, the only thing that we might have to do back there is shore up some fencing, because, you know,
So
they're
you
having
might
a
bring
pool.
in- that's
Yeah.
where the,
How big is that
ginkgo is.
ginkgo?
What's that?
How big is it? Does it look?
The ginkgo, it's on the neighboring property,
Oh, it's on the neighboring
but
property.
it's right up near the fence.
Yeah, we wouldn't be,
So you
yeah,
would bring in construction.
no, not at all.
Okay, yeah. We do like try to take into consideration in our planning anything that, where the drip line or the root system and the drip line goes into the property that's being developed.
Right.
So the neighbor's notified and that fence protection is there for, you know, shared trees that the drip line or the root ball is.
Right, yeah, that's why we added all along that property line there.
Yeah.
That, you know, for that entire, because that's our
Yeah, sounds
whole, that's
good.
our act, that's why we did that. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. Motion to approve? Aye. Great.
Awesome.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Okay, so now we're going to the agenda items. We have normally budget review, but I would say, I know Kimberly has a hard stop, so why don't we do the fall tree giveaway first?
Eileen, do we have another property?
I don't think so. Oh, sorry, removal of a heritage tree. My writing missed that. Apologies. 435 Barclay? Is anybody here for 435 Barclay? Okay, great.
Yeah, this is the.
Welcome back.
Hi. So the reason we're back is we're proposing to take down this 36-inch oak along the street.
Now, this project was approved by the Shade Tree Commission, right, previously?
Yes.
And so the only issue here is you're adding a removal of one tree,
Yes.
heritage tree.
That's correct. And we've proposed the replacements, 4 canopies and two additional trees. I'm just trying to find exactly where those are on the replacement. There's a lot of replacements on this property now, but they have been added. Just trying to figure out exactly where those are.
While you're doing that, do you mind if I ask why you're removing the tree? Thanks.
Sure, we're the new owner of the property.
And your name?
Michael Malone. My wife and I, Stacy, are building a new home here. And at the time we purchased this property, and the first time we looked at it was in, I think, December, and we ended up purchasing it in March. And we went through the whole planning process during the winter. And now that we've started our construction and that tree has kind of bloomed, we didn't appreciate the kind of magnitude of that tree at the time. We went through our initial planning, and we also, because we're not experts at reading plans, didn't appreciate the relationship of that tree to where the house sits. And we would feel more comfortable if that tree was removed. My wife has some safety concerns. We live in Lower Merion Township right now, and back off of Old Gulf Road. And during some of the storms over the winter, there were enormous trees that fell down. A tree fell into our neighbor's home, and several roads were blocked. There was an incident on Old Gulf Road where the tree fell in the car. And just because of the size of the tree and its relationship to the new home, we would feel comfortable removing that. We do understand it's a heritage tree, and we don't take the decision lightly. We are planning to replace that tree with additional canopy trees. We understand the importance of canopy trees, and we are replacing everything on our property, and that's the reasoning behind it.
Okay.
My only issue is that the condition of the tree was, I think, spectacular. I don't know if you've had an arborist evaluate that.
Yes, we worked with Matt Ward, and he agrees with your assessment, and we understand that. We also understand and we hope you understand our experience recently with trees. I understand it's in spectacular condition. I also understand that between ice and wind, the size of the trees that we saw down in our neighborhood back in Old Gulf, and blocking roads for days, and again going through our neighbor's home, we understand that on a scientific level, and Matt's helped us. And from an emotional level, I think my wife in particular would really like the tree to come down. And again, it's not a decision that we took lightly when we initially planned the house. We worked with Matt. We had Matt evaluate all the trees. He said that tree was in great condition, as well as the oak in the back. And we kept those on the initial plan. And as we've started building, and we've been there, and we've just seen the relationship of the home and the tree, and just we couldn't appreciate how big that tree was when the leaves weren't there.
Well, I appreciated it. Where it sits on the property, you have to remember, it's not over a house, it's not over cars, it's not over the sidewalk or in the street. I mean, it sits proud of anything underneath it. There's no rot in the tree. The tree is, I just feel like if at least I don't say that, then anyone can come and say, like, I have this beautiful heritage tree, but I just don't like the tree. It's sort of tough.
And I understand, and we understand. And again, that is why we left the tree on, and that's why we had Matt come evaluate these trees initially, and again, we appreciate that. And one of the things about trees that we've discussed is, again, that we understand that it's a renewable resource, and we plan to plant 4 new canopy trees and cultivate those, and eventually there'll be 4 where there was 1. And we appreciate your role and your function, and we appreciate you mentioning that. And again, we wanted to leave the tree, and we tried to leave the tree, and based on our recent experience over the winter, and now that we're building, it's something that my wife in particular, we feel that we would be comfortable removing the tree, and so that's why we're here.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what kind of tree is it?
It's an oak tree.
What kind of oak?
It doesn't say.
It's not a pin. Yeah. It's sort of like a white oak house. Yeah. So that, this is your prerogative, and we are all, obviously, and I think I can speak, I mean, I would say, I don't want to speak, but is anybody here in favor of this happening, this tree being taken down? Okay, so,
But-
we're, you know, but we don't get to vote on this, we just get to, but we do get to put our opinion out. And, but you have a right to do that, and we just mourn the loss of the tree. And of course, you know, even though emotions are hard to deal with and stubborn, the fact is that the tree is probably not a danger in any sense of the word to, you know, what's going on there. But that is your prerogative, and we do appreciate you putting in the canopy trees, and we hope you pick nice ones. We hope you go extra big on the caliper of those trees, and, you know, put them in places that'll enhance your property soon.
Thank you, and you know, we appreciate your consideration, and again, we appreciate your input.
Yeah, Mike, to make us feel better about this, following on what Jack said, which ones of those are the replacement trees? Which and what diameter would they be?
So the original approval had 10 canopy trees. We are now showing 14 on here. Up front is one of the new ones here, similar, close to where the original oak was, and that is an American yellowwood. Then down the side, we're adding 2 additional glory red maples. And over here, we're also adding more red maples.
Yeah, and we're open, and we intend to work with Matt on determining which trees are appropriate for the lot when we're complete. And we're open to discussing the size of those trees as well. And we do want, again, to make the proper replacements. We don't have a lot of knowledge in landscaping and trees, my wife and I. And so again, that's why we consulted Matt initially with this project, and we intend to consult with him as we move forward on the replacements. But, you know, we asked our engineer just to choose from the menu, and knowing that we're going to complete this project sometime in the winter, and this will have to be done in the spring. So we're open to making the proper and appropriate replacements.
Okay. One thing I'm not clear on, Luke, I think you said you're going from 10 to 14, but this would require an additional 6, 4 of which would be large canopy. So how
Yeah,
did you
so
get to
4
14?
4 are large canopy, and the other 2 are not large canopy. I'll figure out exactly which ones they are.
Yeah, I think you said the 4 were large.
Okay, so you're going from 10 to 16.
Yes,
Oh,
we've
okay.
added 6,
Okay.
4 of which are large.
Okay, that's good, that's better. Okay, and then I think Gretchen, you wanted to say something? Sure.
And it's Gretchen Global with the Radnor Conservancy.
Can you just move the microphone?
Sure.
Thanks.
So is it actually the individual homeowner's prerogative? I thought that they needed to come in front of the Shade Tree Commission to get approval to take a shade tree down.
Yeah, well, we're not approving taking the shade tree down, but we're in essence, we're approving it with the replacement. So that's the way the wording is. We cannot, that tree is their tree. And we cannot, I mean, based on the ordinance, we can't just say, no, you can't do it, period.
That's my understanding of the
Yeah.
ordinance as well. It is the
But
resident's
we could say, okay,
prerogative.
if you're insisting on doing this, then we need the 6 replacement trees, 4 of which are canopy.
Okay. I mean, you know, I mean, Matt Ward is, you know, he's giving you the best advice, and, you know, it's unfortunate that, you know, a 100-year-old tree is going to be taken down because, you know, small replacements are not going to, you know.
It'll be a generation or two.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so it's unfortunate.
Yeah. Yeah, fortunately, this doesn't happen much, so
Yeah.
in the long run, we're still doing pretty well.
Yeah, and I just have one other question to ask. With regards to the replacement trees, the large canopy ones, will any of them be against Barclay Road? That's typically the other thing if we can keep the streets and the tree canopy there.
I believe there is one proposed, and again, we're open to moving another
Yeah.
one down. I'm sorry, there's 3. There's 3 along Barclay Road.
Okay, that's good. And those are the large canopy ones? Okay, that's good.
We'll work with that and try to get the tweaks and stuff.
Okay, that's great, thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay, I know it's difficult for this group, but given it's the owner's prerogative, they have been very kind and they are building a new house. I understand the situation with the storms and the sensitivity that residents have regarding the storms and trying to protect their investments. So, motion to approve? Aye. Thank you very much. Sure.
Thanks for working with Matt on this. I'm sure you'll be seeing him.
We'll get some larger trees.
Okay.
Yeah.
At the street
Thank
to
you.
make sure we don't start.
Yeah, that's great, thank you. Okay, now we'll move to the main part of the agenda, and I was proposing that Kimberly Donchis go first because she has a hard stop, so we would be moving to item 5, and then we'll go back to the budget, item 4. Okay, Kimberly, welcome.
Hi.
And let me just give a brief intro. So if you're wondering, okay, who is Kimberly? Why is she here? So one of our goals was to get to know our partners, get to know our stakeholders, one of our 2018 goals. So Kimberly actually was part of the Radnor Conservancy and actually was the person who, let's say, invented the fall tree giveaway program that the township now funds. And Kimberly still runs that program every year in which we give away approximately 40 shade trees, and the township actually plants them as well. And that's how we try and keep our green tree canopy. So I asked Kimberly to come here and help educate us, since fall is right around the corner and the planning is going to start, on her role and just how this whole initiative works.
Thank you guys for having me here tonight. I can't believe that I haven't been here before to do this in a long time, but I'll just quickly give you a 2-second history of how this all started. About back when Dave Bayshore was township manager, if anyone's been here that long, the township had been receiving money from Chanticleer Gardens, which Chanticleer had cut off because the township had used the funds for something that was not what Chanticleer had designated the money for. So in an effort to replace the canopy, as I was noticing trees being taken down everywhere, I approached Chanticleer Gardens and asked them if they would help fund this initiative to plant street trees in the township. And they have been making an annual donation that Bill White can tell you what they've been giving every year since the start of the program. Back in 2008, Mayor Baird, who worked for the township at that point, and I walked Lancaster Avenue and found all the sites where we thought we could plant shade trees, and I contacted all of those business owners and homeowners and apartment buildings, and when whoever would take a tree, we planted trees there. So I think we had, I don't know how many are still alive, but at least 70 trees along Route 30 that went in back at that time. After that part of the program was done, we decided to, when a homeowner had a street tree that came down that the township had to take down, we approached those homeowners and said, would you like a new tree, a shade tree to replace the one that you already had? That was extremely laborious, but it did work for a while. But it was a lot of labor for not a lot of trees. So we decided to instead do the fall giveaway, where we opened it up to anybody in the township who wanted to plant a street tree, not a tree just anywhere in their yard, but it had to be within the right-of-way, technically, of the street. And it had to be a shade tree, so it couldn't go under wires. And we started opening that up end of August, beginning of September. We've worked with a number of different contractors. Last year, we worked with Bryn Mawr Landscaping. It was the easiest one we've ever done. The bidding came in at just under $25,000, luckily, so we didn't have to do an open bid, which is kind of a pain also, because you have to go with the lowest bid, and that's not necessarily the best planter for the project. The trees were gone within 10 days. Like, there's a huge demand for this. We don't even really advertise it. The Conservancy sends out an email to their email list, and it's put up on the township website. People register through the township website. They pay $35 for these trees, so then they have a stake in the game. Then the township will go out, the way we're going to do it this year, the township will go out and give everybody a stake. They'll put the stake where they want the tree to go, and then the township, I used to do it with my husband, drive around, but now the township does it. We'll go out and make sure that it's like in a decent spot. Then we have PA1 call. The contractor calls PA1 call, they come out and make sure that the spot is good as well. After that, over about a 2-week period, the trees are planted. They are, last year we had 4 species, of which I'm not going to remember, but certainly oaks and maples and linden and a sweet gum, a seedless variety. So homeowners didn't choose the type. If they really had a strong feeling, they could request one of them. Otherwise, we just plunked them in as we saw fit. It's been a great program. People have really enjoyed it. They do commit to watering the trees for a full year. They have water bags on them, and I have been driving around. Ones that are on the public right way, I bring my little gallons and I water those trees when it's dry. We also do the spring giveaway. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
That was started by the Conservancy about 5 years ago, and we started with 100 trees, gave those away. They're all shade trees, all natives. And the next year we did 200. Then we were back to about 150. And the Conservancy funds that project completely at this point. And people love that project. Again, we sell out of the trees, not sell out because they're free, but we run out of donations pretty quickly. And families come and they pick them up, and it's like a family tree, and it's just a win-win all the way around. We do that project in the spring around Earth Day over the course of a weekend.
How many trees in the spring, you said?
It varies per year, between 100 and 200. This year, I think we're going to go for the full 200.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think Laura and Gretchen were Gretchen and Laura were nice enough to come to an earlier meeting and educate us on the Conservancy and the whole
great.
spring giveaway.
Yeah, so it's been a really valuable partnership between the Township, what they do, the Conservancy, and certainly with the fall giveaway with Chanticleer Gardens. So it's kind of the trifecta that makes everything work really well. The Township has been an amazing partner to work with. They're really helpful. You know, obviously for every tree that we get to plant, it's the amount of labor and money that goes into that, it's really, really significant. And when I drive around the township and I see the number that are coming down and know how hard we work just to plant 40 in the fall, it's a little disheartening, to say the least. You know, and when a property owner just wants to clear cut, it's hard to hear.
Yeah.
But I see this program as kind of, at least it's something.
Yeah.
At least we're doing something, and it doesn't cost a lot of money. Homeowners really love it, and it's better than doing nothing, which is where we were.
No, and I just want to say, I'm glad we're a good partner, because you're a fantastic partner to do these things of us.
It's a labor of love, I think, for all of us. It really is a labor of love.
Yeah.
And, I mean, ideally, would we love to plant more?
Right.
Yes,
Sure.
we would.
Yeah.
You know, and I would love to talk to Bill
Yeah.
about, and hi, Bill.
Yeah, well, we're looking at our budget now to start to see if we have
Okay.
more that we can spend on various planning.
Yeah, I would love to do a
initiatives.
project where it wasn't,
Yeah,
we do get a lot of homeowners that can't have a shade tree because they have wires.
right.
But would love to have some street trees anyway, so perhaps that could be a
Ornamentals
separate
or, yeah.
project that was under $25,000 that we may be able to fund.
Yeah, well,
some ideas.
ornamentals are nice if you have to use them. I mean, and they look beautiful, and they do provide some shade, and they do the same good things the bigger ones do, but.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all about the bigger ones,
Yeah.
but if a homeowner,
But-
a tree is better than no
Yeah,
tree.
I've got wires all around me, so I got to do something. I'm not going to have no trees.
Right, right. And I think if we can educate
Right.
the homeowners about that, and I know Eileen and I met the other day, and we discussed briefly that perhaps a partnership with the township and, I haven't even, the Conservancy or some other way that I could raise the funds, maybe from Chanticleer, to do a mailing to a postcard mailing to all the homeowners in the township,
Yeah, we've talked
educating them
about
about what
that,
you
sure,
do.
yeah.
And from a Conservancy standpoint, so that there's some reference, and if we, get more information on the township website about
Right.
what the rules are, because I know that's tough. We're sandwiched around other municipalities that do things in very different ways. I was telling Eileen, I think Lower Merion has 7 full-time arborists on staff, and their own trucks, and their own this, and their own, all that. And then you can go completely the other way, where I think interdifferent, no one's paying any attention to what we might fall somewhere in the middle of that.
Right.
Which reminds me that when this project started, there was no arborist at all working with Radnor. And when we redid the ordinance, John Hosback came on at that point to help rework the ordinance, of which I worked on that all those years ago as well. And he has, I think paid partially by the Chanticleer funds, all the way by the Chanticleer funds.
Just for the
I
commission.
guess we'll find that out in the budget.
Sort of, yeah. Anyway, so that's where we are. If you guys have any great ideas, other ways to promote.
Yeah, I would say,
and plant.
why don't we go one by one, just to any questions?
Yeah.
And then, Ginny, anything from you?
No questions, but thanks very much for all your effort. It's so appreciated.
Thank you.
Matt?
So we've started a tree census, street tree master plan census. So we've done 500. So that's really a thimbleful of what we need to do. But we're seeing gaps. All this goes to Google Earth, right? So all this data will show up on a Google Earth map that you can 3D, and you can see where the big gaps are.
Mm-hmm.
So that might be useful. Just that information might be useful.
What would be wonderful for that is, as people are taking down the large trees who don't want to replant on their properties, because you can't, if a homeowner takes down a giant tree, you guys know, you can't make them replant it on their property. It's just not. But ideally, if they were more educated and they understood the need in the township on other properties, they might be willing then to say, hey, I'll pitch in $200, $300 to plant a tree.
Right, and it's also being planted in somewhere besides the health strip,
Yeah.
which,
Yeah,
and not around wires.
right. Yeah, that's where that's where the spring tree came in, was because then people could plant them anywhere on their property, not just in the right of way. So.
I thank you so much for the presentation. And I noticed you guys have been doing, I've heard, by the way, that you guys have been putting trees in some of the parks, right, on your own? And I don't.
That's been going on
Yeah.
certainly
And
Lawrence
since
and
we're
Water.
talking about this, do you
Yeah.
mind if they make a little, let us know about what they're doing? They're putting trees in the parks. Can you
I
tell us
think
a
you
little bit?
spoke about that last time.
Yeah, but I didn't get the details because I knew they just
Can
put.
we do that offline then, Jack? Because we still have a lot to cover in the agenda.
Sure, I'm
Is that
just
okay?
trying to get us, while we're talking about networking on planting trees,
Mm-hmm.
for the community to know that the Conservancy is putting trees in our parks. And
And we always have
That's a big
leftover
help.
trees as well, and they usually get planted on the trail, and then, I water them in anyway. But there are trees going in kind of, when we have leftovers, kind of, Mark Dominic would come and take a couple and put them in the parks, and we would kind of get
so
them
you
all
coordinate through
planted.
Mark on that?
We used to, yeah. I met this morning with Steve
Uh-huh.
McNellis, and he was just wonderfully cooperative and really excited about anything that we want to do. So.
Okay.
James?
Thank you very much. I think it's great. Couple questions. In the fall, it's 40 trees you plant?
It's whatever we can get for under $25,000. So last year
Okay.
it was 40.
Okay. And what size do you get usually?
You may, as you drive around the township, you might see them. They're the ones that are staked and have gator bags, green gator bags on them, and they're spread out throughout the township.
Okay.
They're probably maybe 3 to 4 inch.
Okay.
Yeah, these were
large.
beautiful. These were really, each contractor does a little different. These were really nice.
Gotcha.
Steve, is that accessible, where those trees are planted? Like if James wanted to, look and see how these trees are doing? I know we do go, it must be somewhere because we go out and monitor them, right?
So what we did, so I created a bid spec that I sent to 3 what we felt were qualified contractors. Bryn Mawr Landscaping was the lowest responsible bid. And what we did for that was we just tell them it's within the right-of-way, within the bounds of Radnor Township.
Right.
So that while that's out, we get that price. And then Kimberly, who's been doing this stuff for years and does a fantastic job, works with the arborist, works with Public Works, and picks those locations. So we can get, Leah McVeigh is fantastic. She can provide the addresses of those trees.
I have
and-
them too.
Yeah.
I mean, either, I can send them, I can send the list to Eileen if you
Yeah,
guys would
yeah,
like
I
to.
just think
Yeah.
I'm going to get on the agenda as having an archives of the shade tree, because a lot of this stuff gets lost. Nobody can keep track of what we're doing. There's no central place for the documents or whatever, but,
So Leah's been involved with this since since I was previously in Public Works with Kimberly.
Yeah.
So she has the spreadsheets from every year,
Leah McVeigh.
whether it be the tree giveaway or
Right.
the fall treat, so that can all be provided.
Yeah, so James, you could get that from Leah, so you could go out and look at some of the trees, see how
I
they're doing.
think, yeah, and actually, to tell you the truth, if you just drive around the township, you'll recognize them. They're new trees, and like Kimberly was saying, they have the green gator bags on them, so I think and they're staked.
Yeah.
So you'll probably spot them.
Did you plant some at Ithan Elementary? Do you plant them at schools?
I don't know whether any have been planted at Ithan Elementary.
Okay.
Yeah, but with this particular fall giveaway, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Now, are you gonna have a meeting before the fall giveaway? I know one year you had a meeting where you attended.
I met this morning with Steve, and I've
Okay.
talked to, not this Steve, the other Steve, Public Works, Steve.
Yeah.
Steve McNellis.
Thank you.
McNellis.
And I met with the new gentleman, Jay, who's doing the parks stuff,
Okay.
who's going to be kind of my go-to.
Okay.
But Leah and I have spoken already about it, and
Okay.
I've contacted Bryn Mawr Landscaping in the hopes that they might be able to do it again, and they've concurred. So other than sending out the flyer
Right.
and posting it, it's
It's
just
sort
good to
of-
go. It kind of runs
you know what,
itself, which
right.
is really great. I mean, the first part of it does.
Okay.
Joe?
Okay, you said the word drop in a bucket, I think during that, like 40 trees. So there's a lot of demand. You could give away a lot more than 40.
Yeah.
Well, I'm kind of green here, but I think if you polled every resident of Radnor, they would want to see more trees along Route 30, more trees down along their street. Why can't we?
Well, that's why we're
What is the
having Bill tonight.
$25,000 limit?
I'll tell you where it came from.
Okay.
In 2008, there was $0 for tree planting. So the money from Chanticleer, and now the township pitches in extra money than even Chanticleer donates. These trees are very expensive to plant. They're about $600 a pop. It's just a matter of dollars.
So,
But Joe, I will say, the next topic up is the budget. That's
Okay.
why I thought
So,
this will all kind of
We're
go
taking
together
a look at our
nicely.
budget to see if we
Yeah.
could do some more. We don't want money just, have tons of money just sitting around when we can plant more trees. So that's why I was saying, we might be able to help you up this if we're coordinating, up the number
Up
of
the
trees
number
planted in
and-
the fall.
Or do Plan B, which is, although I'm all about the shade tree, if we wanted to do just a couple, offer them to people who want a nice green tree, but not, that it's under wires and they can't put a shade
Yeah,
tree necessarily.
sure.
That could be.
Yeah, people that want an
I'm not
option,
sure
yeah.
how it would go from a budgeting standpoint, because under 25 is my understanding is like,
So the bid I put out was to select contractors because we assumed on our estimate was under $25,000. So we just go to the board with that. If it's going to be over $25,000,
It's a whole-
we're going to have to go to a sealed bid process and perhaps even prevailing wages, depending on what that cost is.
it's a whole different kettle of fish when you go above that, and we have done that. It made the project much more, it made it much harder.
Well, Steve,
from
maybe
all
we
the-
could do like a parallel project.
That's what I'm thinking, is if we could do.
It's actually
two different
itemized
things for under-
separately.
Yeah, spring.
So with the assistant manager and finance director here, I'm going to tell you that we can't usurp the bidding laws if we're going to just do two mirrored projects, but there could be two parallel projects of different types.
Right, this would be, because we're talking about people that want to put trees under wires. So there would be different kinds of trees.
Even if it was Morris Avenue? I know you want the cherries. No. Not happening. Anyway, we can talk about that.
Sure.
That could be like a future goal, is to, obviously, I would love to plant as many as people will take. And so, we can move from there and work with the Conservancy. And-
Yeah. Well, we're a very together group now, and we're pretty much in place and getting experience, so we want to take a look. So something where a pre-existing framework is easier than to create something brand new. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So Kimberly, I just have one question. I'll go last. So one, I'm a big fan, and I think this is wonderful,
'Cause
all
you-
the effort that you do.
Your street has been.
Yes, my street has been a beneficiary. That's how I got to know Kimberly a few years ago, so I'm a big fan. My one question is, what do you need from us, or how can we help?
Honestly, at this point,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of, it kind of,
Take our
Good.
time.
it kind of just, under the radar, just does its job.
Right.
It used to be that each commissioner got 7 trees. Maybe you guys remember for far that, back in the day. People have suggested, oh, do it by ward. I really feel that it's better for the township where people are not, that's my own personal feeling and my, where I've led it to this point is like, let's just make it, equal opportunity, whoever gets there first. But all the commissioners are made aware that this project is going on, so they can send the notice to their constituents and have them sign up. And certainly some commissioners have been more proactive about that than others.
Right.
At this point, with the amount of trees, and I think we're pretty good to go.
No, that's
But,
great.
yeah.
So I think, like, my outcome from this is great that this project goes on. And I think our opportunity is, in looking at the budget, how can we look at planting more trees,
Right.
whether they're
Because
shade
tree,
trees
wouldn't it be
or
great if
ornamental
shade tree
trees?
wasn't just about taking them down?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you love that? Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
We agree.
I feel so bad.
We agree.
I get the good job. You guys get the tough part. Anyway.
Well, we're trying to change that.
I understand.
We're on a journey
Anyway,
here.
thank you guys very
Thank you.
much.
Good. Thanks, Kimberly. Okay. Bill, do you want to join us, and we'll dovetail nicely into the budget?
Oh, I'd be happy to.
Super.
So first of all, thanks for having me. I remember talking with then, or now Commissioner Abel, last summer about this time, about trying to schedule an opportunity to come and speak with you folks. So I'm glad we were able to get it done. If we could pull up my laptop onto the projectors. Ooh, yeah, not many trees in
need
that
some
picture.
trees.
Let me. It's obviously somewhere far west of here. I believe you guys have, or this information has been shared with the shade tree. This is an operating statement of our shade tree fund that we established back in 2013. And as Kimberly pointed out, prior to then, all of the money that the township was either receiving or using for planting and or bringing trees down was being accounted for out of the general fund, which is a very, very difficult place to track any one particular thing, because the general fund houses all of our operations: police, public works, community development, finance. So what we did in 2013 is we established a special commemorative shade tree special revenue fund, which is really fancy way of saying we took the money that is dedicated towards planting trees and moved it into its own account, its own set of self-balancing accounts. So the use of these funds is restricted by the code to planting trees or the professional services surrounding planting trees. So the arborist, as we touched on a moment ago with John Hoshbeck. So what we're looking at, so since 2013, where we get money from, where this fund gets money from, is it does earn interest. And not surprisingly, as the balance in the fund grew over the years, the amount of interest it earned grew as well. We have our donations, contributions. Those are the dollars from Chanticleer. We have our fines, and those are the ones levied by the ordinance, where developers or homeowners in violation who have to pay the fine. All of those dollars are then deposited into this fund. And then lastly, we have the board established transfers, where it takes money from the general fund and deposits it into this fund. And by doing so, as I mentioned, once that money is in this fund, it can only then be used for planting. So it's the board's way of allocating some money towards this priority. Then on the expenditure side, we have our big tree planting program. As Kimberly pointed out, in 2017, we landed just below 25,000. We're using that 25,000 as it's a bit of an arbitrary threshold. If we go above 20, if we wanted to do 80 trees and double it up, we'd have to go to the public bidding. It can be done. It's just a lot lot more work, a lot more expensive in a lot of cases per tree, because first of all, you're subject to whatever the bid comes back at, and then as Steve pointed out, prevailing wages could drive the cost up as well for the installation. So that's why we're using the 25,000. And that is a charter issue. It's in the township's charter in Chapter 7. It's not something that's negotiable. The 25,000 is set. And as Steve also pointed out, we have to be careful if we try to split this up into different projects, that they are very unique in their scope. Because if we planted 80 trees and we split it up into 2 bids, we would almost certainly get dinged during our audit for bid splitting. But we can plant more trees with this money through this fund. It's just if we go over 25,000, it has to be bid.
Bill, can you clarify why the budget says 15,000?
So for 2018, it was set at 15,000. To be honest, this was not given, and I'll get into this in a little bit more detail. Actually, if you don't mind, let me circle back to that in just a moment. I'll just finish, but in addition to the big tree program, we also have the street tree planting where some dollars are allocated there. Dollars have been allocated to some park tree replacements, although that hasn't really received a lot of attention out of this fund yet. And then we have our contractual services where starting in 2016, we were paying for John's services as it relates to these programs. For 2018, these amounts were set by the Board of Commissioners during the budget process. And to be honest, the amounts were, they weren't geared toward any specific end goal. So it's not like the board sat down and said, all right, well, we only want to put 30 trees in next year, so we're going to cut the budget to 15. It was more of, we want to have some appropriations there and for a project. We'll stick it at 15. The conversation I had with Kimberly is the real number that we can focus on, we as a township, is the 66,000. And what that's telling us is that based on the amount of cash that's in that fund now, and assuming we spend all of these amounts, we would still have 66,000 left over for additional plantings of whatever kind. If it was part of the big tree program, if it's shade or street trees, park trees, whatever it may be. The 66,000 is what we would have left to work with. We've already talked about the big tree program for this year, and we're set at a target of 25,000 again. So the 15, we could almost replace the 15 with a 25. It's easy to do in a spreadsheet. Legally, the board would have to bless that. And when they approve the ultimate expenditure for the big tree program, that whatever amount they authorize, this budget will reflect accordingly. Yeah, as a protocol, you got to go through the chair.
So I can repeat the question. The question is, can you explain the difference between the big tree and the street tree program?
I'm not sure I can.
But Kimberly can.
Kimberly can.
Would you like to explain this?
The difference between the two programs is the street tree planting were tree replacements that we did in downtown Wayne, as I remember, when we had a loss of a lot of trees. And we contracted with Mayfield Gardens over a couple of years to go in and do some replacement trees planting in downtown Wayne where they had to dig out the pits and plant the trees. So that was paid for separately from the other budget.
Why is that 83,000 for this year?
I think that's for the,
That's agenda item number 7.
yeah, that's downtown Wayne planting.
Okay.
So, again, what this fund is limited to on an annual basis in terms of how much the township can spend is where it gets its money from. As you would expect or imagine, the amount we get from the fines is going to be very, very difficult to predict, and is almost something that we would have to wait until after a year to determine how much is there to be spent. So if fines were levied in 18 against a project that money could then be spent in 19. I would hesitate putting a big number here as a budget, because if it doesn't materialize, we may end up accidentally spending more than the fund has in cash. The donations have been very predictable, although they've dropped a little bit in the more recent years. At least the portion that Chanticleer is contributing for the tree program has gone down. It's still $15,000. We put $18,000 in because we budgeted prior to receiving the 15. So by the time we got the 15,000 late last year, we were still expecting 18. So that's why that's an 18. And then the transfers from the general fund are really up to the Board of Commissioners and how much they want to contribute to the program. So in terms of having discussions about a more expansive tree planting program, in terms of talking and trying to get more money allocated to this priority, that's where the discussion would be had. Depending on what the ultimate goal is, that's the number the Board of Commissioners would allocate. I will say that in the general fund, which is the source of those dollars, our budgets are balanced within a few $1,000s. So it's in all likelihood going to require some sort of additional revenue, either planned through some sort of real estate tax adjustment or allocated by reprioritizing other programs and services. It's not like the money's sitting there waiting to be spent. That's the shade tree. Oh, the one other thing I did want to note is that over the course of the year, the township is responsible for removing dangerous trees. 100% of those costs are still accounted for and paid out of the general fund. And that was one of the big reasons why we established this fund, is to make sure that those dollars were not commingled and to make sure that we could assure Chanticleer and anybody else that was providing financial support to planting trees that we weren't using those to bring them down. So there's no dollars in here associated with bringing any trees down.
Now, I noticed that the transfers from the general fund, there was nothing for 16, nothing for 17, and there's nothing in there for 18, but it's now showing under the full right-hand budgeted that, will there be a $25,000 transfer for 18?
As things stand right now, yes. The reason why those weren't completed in 16 and 17 is we make these transfers in November and December after we see where the general fund's at in terms of its financial health. And if we have to reprioritize money, some things may have to hold. And we had some business tax revenues that we were counting on that didn't materialize in any of those 2 years. So again, though, this is something that does not get a lot of discussion when we're talking about the budget. And if there are ways, or the board themselves could say, we are going to establish X number of dollars regardless of how the general fund performs. It is set. We're going to make it law through some sort of legislation, and then that would take any of the uncertainty out. That would make it a guaranteed amount every year, similar to how the board allocates money for debt payments. It's non-negotiable. It's something that they agreed to pay, so it comes out first. The board can, through its own priority setting, make those kind of determinations. They have not yet. The 25 has just kind of been a soft number that we've been putting in, and they've been approving.
Right.
Sure.
So I know that we, the township, have been awarded Tree City USA for, I think this year was the 26th year. And just looking through their stipulations, it says, of course, the township has to have its shade tree ordinance, which we have. But I remember it saying that there has to be I think it's $2 per capita. I don't know exactly what that means, but is that you're supposed to be setting aside $2 per resident or $2 per family that goes towards your shade tree? Can we investigate that, or I'm happy to So what does that mean, $2 per capita? What does that mean?
Well, per capita,
Per person, wouldn't it?
Is that per person?
well, yeah, I'm doing the math.
Oh, okay.
So we would need to be closer to 60,000
Yeah.
Per year.
So, I mean, that's something, I know that we're proud to say that we're a Tree City USA. We've got it signs up all over the township. So if I send you guys information about that, can you investigate that? Okay.
Madam President, we far exceed that number, because if you total in the amount of trees we take down, the public works, we add that in, the utilities, what they work in the township, I would say that our number would probably be I'm gonna guess at $250,000 a year, which I would say we are so woefully under that number. I've spoken to the board last year and this year, I think earlier this year, that we need to budget somewhere around $3 to $4 million per year over the next 25 years to get caught up. And that's just probably on the removal of trees and the maintenance of trees in the right-of-way. That does not include PennDOT's work on the PennDOT routes. So if that gives you a scale of how far behind we are, and you see the numbers that are here within our budget, and when we're looking at $3 to $4 million per year that we have to invest, add in what we have to plant, what we need to put in the ground. And I know with the small crowd we have, but the very knowledgeable crowd we have here, and I know John provided a map to the Board of Commissioners, and I'm not sure how many years ago that was, that showed a comparison from many years ago of the tree canopy in the township compared to where it was a number of years ago and how much has disappeared. And I know I'm the bearer of bad news, but there are an awful lot of trees in the right-of-way that the township's responsible for that have to come down that are hazardous, as well as the PennDOT trees that are hazardous. And I believe even this week there was a limb that came down and hit a FedEx truck that was actually moving, and thank God the driver did not get killed. But I mean, that's a PennDOT road where it came down. But this is where we're at, and as we were talking before, you have a huge role in advocacy in front of the Board of Commissioners when budget time starts, which is only a few months away, that we're going backwards. So we are probably 25 to 30 years at least behind schedule, and to get caught up, the number is huge. So I'm sure you'll see a very large budget recommendation coming out of the administration this year on just trees.
And if I could, just before the next gentleman, I pulled it up real quick. Yeah, and standard number 3 is a community forestry program with an annual budget of at least $2 per capita. So the annual budget, we would, I mean, just in looking at this, we would satisfy that at 140, or I'm sorry, well, in some years we would have, some years we wouldn't have. This year, 2018, definitely, just within this fund, if we spend the whole 133,000. But the standard does say, to meet the standard each year, the community must document at least $2 per capita towards the planting, care, and removal of city trees, and the planning efforts to make those things happen. So, to the manager's point, we have another 150 to 200,000 in the general fund that would go towards that part of the standard.
Yeah, that's great to hear, and plus it's nice to hear that there's going to be an advocate asking for more for planting, so that's great. Thank you. Sir?
Hi, my name is John Sheehan. I live in Wayne. I've lived here since 1971. I was a young guy when I moved here. And one of the things that attracted me to Radnor Township, and particularly to the street I live on, I live right across the road from Kimberly, is were the tall canopy trees. The neighborhood I live in is that it's on Windsor Avenue, Farm Road, Banbury, Francis. It's the streets that go around Wawa on the north side. My estimate is in the neighborhood I live in, we've lost about 70% of the tree canopy during the time that I've lived there. And it's not just the loss of 70%, the loss is continuing. I'm not sure if anybody on the township staff has used any of the tools available from U.S. Department of Forestry. iTree is one of them.
Yeah.
where you can do a satellite view and lock in the perimeters of Radnor Township and measure the tree canopy using a sampling method. I did that a few years ago, and my estimate was the tree canopy was somewhere around 30%. For urban, suburban areas like Radnor Township, the recommended tree canopy is more like 40%. A city like Atlanta, Georgia has a tree canopy in the high 30s, 40%. To me, the first step in this whole process, and I think everybody in this room is on the very same page, would be to determine what the tree canopy is in Radnor, try to determine what the rate of loss is. I have not heard a single official in Radnor Township ever say that they thought our tree canopy was growing, just the opposite. I think everybody seems to agree it's losing. One example is the first applicant that was on the agenda today. They're going to take out trees. Using the Radnor shade tree replacement formula, the net loss of tree basal area, the way I've calculated it for the developments in my neighborhood, is about 97%. So for every removal that's approved with the replacement, the trees are losing the battle roughly 98%. To me, the question that should be driving the budget is how many trees do we need to plant to stop the tree loss? And how long will that take? And where should those trees be concentrated to assist in alleviating stormwater problems? Which to me I think there's a parallel between loss of trees, canopy, and stormwater runoff.
There definitely is. That's science.
Yeah.
That's scientifically documented, yeah.
But to me, I recommend for the township and this board in particular to recommend to the Board of Commissioners to adopt a policy of zero net tree loss. For this commission, I would recommend that you start keeping metrics on how many trees with how many basal inches you approve the removal of versus the replacement of. I'd estimate the loss that you're approving is roughly 98%.
Yeah.
At 98%, the loss is going to continue. The neighborhood that I live in, just to give you one little example, I appeared before the Planning Commission on the development at 321 West Lancaster in June. I think Matt was there. It's the property right next to Sherwin-Williams on West Lancaster Avenue. Used to be a residential home, turned into a medical building. Now we're going to get a bank in there. The development is going to remove every single tree. Some of the trees are pine trees that are 60 feet tall. It's a lot of tree canopy. But for the developer, there's hardly any penalty at all in removing all the trees. And our ordinances allow that to happen. Matt, you said I should come to the Shade Tree Committee. I'm here. And I actually think the buck stops at the Board of Commissioners, not with you. You're operating with an existing ordinance. Our ordinance, in my opinion, is really weak when it comes to replacement. Here's a suggestion for you to recommend to the Board of Commissioners. If you're going to allow a developer to remove trees, charge them a per square inch based on tree basal area for every square inch they're going to remove. Take that money and put it into the Township Tree Fund, and I think it would generate a ton of revenue.
Yeah. John, I find this extremely interesting, but I'm worried that, Bill, you were still in the middle of your presentation, weren't you?
No, that was pretty much it.
You were
I was
finished,
ready to
okay.
field
But
questions.
you were open, but we might want to ask you a couple questions about it. But John, that was, I mean, extremely
Yeah.
interesting, but we have to,
Just one final
Yeah.
point. On that line
Yeah.
showing fees and fines, year 2015, that $60,000, I believe, is all from the Villa Stratford development.
That's
There were
correct,
two
115 Stratford
There were
Avenue.
two owners of the property. The first owner was fined $30,000. That was Luthra. I don't think he paid anything. And the second owner was Benson Builders. They were fined $60,000.
Correct.
and I can tell you, John, that's low. There should be a lot more. I've been on the commission since then, and the trees that people didn't want to plant, they're supposed to pay a fee to the township, and that looks low to me. Very low,
Yeah.
the amount of fees. And I know that, I believe one of Chanticleer's problems with the money coming in was that we weren't really getting enough bang for our buck in terms of enforcing the ordinance. In terms of protecting the canopy, part of that whole puzzle is to really, not to be draconian and not to be mean to people, but to get fees and fines where they're richly deserved, and get that into the shade tree fund. And we back off on that. So that is ridiculous to me. 250 with all the violations we've had. Supposedly, even when contractors work in the township illegally, that's supposed to go in there. So we need to make sure that money's going into the shade tree fund. There should be pretty healthy fine and fee thing going in there, and the fact that it's down at least 75% from previous years under this commission. Thank you, John. I'd love to get your information, for communication purposes after, if you could give it to me. I appreciate it.
We actually
So,
had John's
few
comments
comments.
on an agenda item for tonight.
Yeah, the loss of the basil area, correct.
Yeah, we were going to actually discuss his comments. That's new business.
Okay.
So I'd like to say a few comments. Thank you, John. One, I do think that's a great goal, the idea of recommended 0% loss and even a target increase. Second, we do have a master tree plan in which we are trying to establish at least the as-is, where we are now. It won't tell us where we have been, but it will tell us where we are, and it will identify where the gaps are, and then we can do targeted replacement, starting from the center where it's most densely populated with Wayne residents, working our way to the outskirts. And Matt's actually leading up that effort right now. And then the other thing is, I do like your idea about the possibly making a change to the ordinance, which I think we could look at, because we do treat basically all trees as equal, $500 if you don't decide not to replace a tree. That is an interesting concept. Instead, look at it by the loss of tree canopy or basal area. So I think those are good comments. And then the last thing I just want to comment to, James, I need your help here. I think you are interested in working with somebody from that neighborhood in regards to the tree replacements that are being taken out by this bank?
Yes. I believe there was something, Steve, with the last meeting, you said that.
Yeah, I don't know if you folks read that memo I gave you.
Yes, I did.
So the last item is 321 West Lancaster. So Mr. Sheen was at the Planning Commission, and the developer had 10 trees he was willing to spend, which would be $5,000 to the shade tree fund. Mr. Sheehan brought up a great idea. His neighborhood is the one losing the canopy. So the Planning Commission agreed. The developer is going to work to put those trees on Windsor Avenue in conjunction with the residents. And
I can help out
if
if they
Mr.
need
Gibbons
it.
would want to jump in and help the residents as far as species, size and type, and location, that would be fantastic. So we figured it was a little hard getting folks together in the summer, and we don't want to plan anything now anyway. So that would be an early fall thing. And Mr. Sheehan's going to be our point person for that, to try to rally the troops and see who's willing to have a tree. But that would be great if Mr. Gibbons could help us on that.
James.
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons is my dad.
Yeah, okay, so that that sounds like at least a path forward. We'll have John and James work together in figuring out how to best spend the $5,000 in that affected neighborhood, so thank you.
I'd like to talk on the canopy issue.
Go ahead.
I agree totally with what you're saying on the canopy issue now. I've been with I'm the longest tenured shade tree member, and I've been trying to anecdotally monitor the canopy. And I have had some discussions about how I don't believe that our census can effectively measure the canopy. Okay, so the idea, there's ways of looking at the canopy through modern technology, Google Maps and things like that, where you don't have to census every tree, and you can't census every tree in all the parks anyway. So I see that we have what I think is a disastrous loss of canopy, and we know we're going to be losing all the ashes on top of that, which may be a sixth or a fifth of our canopy, because a lot of those ashes are in the parks. They grow down park streams beds. So I think we have to look at as a commission, we are responsible for having an awareness of our canopy and knowing whether the canopy is deteriorating or not. And I think that has to be separate from the tree census. We have to have a plan to do that, and I would be glad to spearhead that. And we can get U.S. Department of Forest like you say, to give us advice on how to do that. I had thought the U.S. Forest Department was supposed to do a canopy measurement. I was told by tree tenders in this area, but then apparently it never happened. So those things are also dependent on budget. But I think we are losing canopy at a disastrous rate, and in order to, unless we have a scientific measurement of it, more or less, I don't believe we're going to get any attention to it. And that's the big job. So what I'm saying is, for us to just say, well, I think we're losing canopy, isn't going to get attention, isn't going to get money. You need to really be able to kind of prove it.
Also like John's idea of aiming for zero net loss by tracking,
yeah.
at least starting maybe this year, because we're not that far. And we're sort of
Well, we need to know what we
halfway
have,
point.
to know what we lost.
Yeah, we could maybe go back to see what we approved and
Yeah.
try and measure what we
Yeah.
approved to be taken down and sort of start to realize. And I think once you have metrics, you can build your case to the BOC. Without metrics and data, you're just talking.
So is there someone who wants to take the lead on that, going through the past records from the previous years and calculating out this is what was replaced, this is what was taken away?
I don't think that alone is going to tell you anything about canopy. I just think it's going down a non-productive, I think it's important to do that in terms of our government.
Yeah.
How many trees our government, our township is
Right,
putting up
approved.
as opposed to taking down.
Right.
But that isn't really going to tell you anything about the canopy as a whole.
Madam Chair, if I may, we're already in the process going off that site that you had. We're going to go with our new GIS system that we have, and we're going to try to do the measurements off of that. We
that'd be
already
great.
are sending an email on that, so we're already going to start the process of working on that. And then we'll get the results back to you to see where we're at on
So
that.
what are
On
the
the canopy measurement?
The canopy measurement?
Correct.
But that's just streets, right?
It's the entire township.
Oh, good.
Yeah, that's great.
Oh, great, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, super. Hey, so this dovetails nicely into Ginny's agenda item.
Well, I
Madam
think-
Chair?
Yes?
Just to
Oh.
put a button on the budget real quick, just so the commission understands the process. Any recommendations that you would like as a commission to recommend to the Board of Commissioners, we would need those in September. The township manager's recommended budget gets submitted to the commissioners in early October. And then from there, the board has several public hearings. There are inevitably things that come in and go out of the budget before it's ultimately introduced at the second meeting in November. So if there's a recommendation to be made, the earlier the better. It's always a lot harder to add things to the budget after it's already kind of been half-baked. So that's why I said the end of September. If, for whatever reason, logistically or time commitment on your end, you can't get that until October, it's not the end of the world. But that's the time frame to get anything into the 2019 budget. Because like I said, the board will introduce the final budget document at the second meeting in November, and at that point, the budget is the budget.
Bill, do you have a
So
copy of this
Trish,
for us?
can you please add that to our agenda for August? We can draft a budget with our request, and then we can look to finalize it either at the August meeting or September and be ready to submit. One question, though, how do we amend the current budget to have $25,000 in for the big tree planting?
So what'll happen is when we get the pricing back, or when Kimberly and Steve get the pricing back from the contractor, let's just say it's $24,800 again, the same as 17. The board has to approve the expenditure of that money, and when they do, they will also they will in effect amend the budget to go from 15 to 24,800. So it'll be enough to cover.
Okay, that's great.
So
Thank
for
you.
2018, on that item, we're taken care of.
So
Madam
I just
Chair.
have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Because I know we're trying to do some educational awareness marketing. My question is, are these expenditures hard and fast line items, or are you able to put in additional buckets, if you will, for like a marketing line item?
The answer is yes, we could add a marketing line item. What we have to be careful with or mindful of is making sure that the use of the money is consistent for what the fund was established for. I think that would, my personal opinion, that's totally appropriate, but that's the one restriction we need to have in the
Okay.
front of our minds.
One question, compensatory funds, where does that go?
Yeah, so when we do, so Mr. Sheehan was very easy to see. So the $60,000 was a fine to 115 Stratford LLC. On top of that $60,000, they had to replace, they actually brought a crane in and planted, I think, 5 like 40-foot trees. So that was a double win for the township. So they do go in there. The fines that are levied are not necessarily massive. They are a lot of times in the hundreds or smaller amounts. Sometimes they're appealed, so they might not show. So you're not going to see what really goes in for 18 till the end of the year. But I just wanted to remind the chair and the commission, we've talked about it via email and at these meetings. So once you get together and you come up with what you want to request from the Board of Commissioners, it adds so much credibility to it if 1, 2, or 3 of you would attend the meeting and put forth what you want. The SWIM Act members do it, Planning Commission members have come, so I just keep trying to hammer that home. Me stating the case is one thing, you folks being there is infinitely greater effect.
Good point.
Yes.
So, Bill, thank you for drawing my attention to the budget so we close that item out properly. Are there any other questions on the budget before we move off this item?
So Bill, I think you were saying you could provide that to us in copies of this?
Yes, absolutely. I'll send a PDF version to Trish, and she
Right.
can distribute it.
So we'll
And
get
then it doesn't change significantly month by month, but periodically, if you want it updated, I'm more than happy to do that and send it out. So just make the request and we'll get it done.
Okay. Super, thank you.
And thanks again for having me.
Thank you.
No, thank you. That was great. We learned a lot. Okay, so Ginny, will go to you, which, I'm sorry, is under new business, so I'm skipping a little bit, but it dovetails nicely. And then Steve, will go to you for the township tree plants, and then I think that will be our last item.
I sort of feel like we've discussed that new business item. It was very helpful that John came and basically gave my presentation, because I had very much empathy with your email that Gretchen passed on to us in the Shade Tree Commission, and agree with your point that while they did meet code, something did not jive right, that they were able to clear the whole property and have basically 98%, what was it, tree basil area removed. So I agreed that I thought we should open up a discussion on the ordinance to help prevent a situation like that happening again. And I thought we had some good ideas here and some good thoughts. I don't know what the procedure is to make any of those substantive changes to an ordinance, but it might be a goal for us this year to address that. I don't know what anybody else thought about John's presentation, but I was very much in favor of making some changes to prevent that from happening.
I see 3 action items out of that. One will be James and John working together on that specific neighborhood to properly use the $5,000 from the bank. I think the other goal is looking at the ordinance and considering amending the ordinance with regards to the fines. And the third one, action I see is, you know, we did our 2018 goals. When it comes time to do 2019, we could say, hey, one of our goals is to not let the tree canopy or tree basal area decrease, or we could even put a target in there as an increase, which I think will help once we have what the actual metric is. So to me, those are kind of like the 3 key takeaways.
I would agree, Eileen.
Yeah, okay. And so we can talk in another meeting about, hey, do we want to refresh the ordinance? You know, we've amended it with the shade, with the recommended tree list, but I don't think we've reviewed it recently or renewed it recently. So that's something we could talk about at a next meeting.
Sounds good.
Okay, I'll mark that down.
Just on the Philippone thing, which was on the agenda.
Wait,
if I
but
may.
before we go there,
Okay.
if it's okay, can we go to the next agenda item that Steve
Oh, yeah, I
has?
thought you thought we were finished.
No, we just have, now we're going to, I'm sorry, I've been skipping around. Now we're going to go to item 6, which is Steve, because the budget where Bill marked out $85,000, I think about that, that's for a special project the township is taking on that relates to trees. So I thought it would be great if Steve could make us aware of that.
So in that memo, I gave a little blurb on this project, but I'll give you a little more detail. So members of the Wayne Business Association came to the township. We've gone, it's been actually probably a year or two in various iterations. If you may remember, at one point the sidewalk was getting ripped up, new electric lines were going in, and right now there's new gas lines going in. But what it came down to is as we continually toured the area, there was a lot of trees that were planted that were not proper for that type of a streetscape. They need to be removed. Some of them block storefronts instead of enhancing the area. So with the Wayne Business Association, and our main point of contact has been Chris Todd of Christopher's. A plan was really roughly drafted as, hey, here's these streets, Lancaster Avenue, North Wayne, South Wayne, all within the WBOD, the Wayne Business Overlay District, which is pretty much from Aberdeen up to somewhere by Banbury. And they gave us a very generic map. So my job was to take that and make a scope, create a scope for a landscape architect to basically put together a bid package that would show the removal of the existing trees, which are unsuitable for the area, repair of concrete sidewalk along with that because they've heaved up the sidewalk. We would use tree grates. So we would get the appropriate trees that you can use the lightweight tree grates with so people can walk over them instead of tripping over the big mulch piles that go out there. The WBA would like to put LED lights within the trees. And they're also contributing. So we talked to 2 landscape architects. None of them could meet our timeline. So tomorrow, myself, John Hosback, and Chris Todd are going to meet with a landscape architect. I'm going to provide them our scope. But if you look at the last line in the memo under the WBA item, I'm requesting the Shade Tree Commission appoint a member to work along with this team. I think this would be a very appropriate project for the Shade Tree Commission to be involved in with your expertise. So I'm giving a basic scope of work to a landscape architect, but the comeback on that is that one of you folks would work along with John Hosback, myself, and that landscape architect to pick appropriate trees, understanding we have utility conflicts running all through Wayne, so it's actually a pretty tough job picking the right trees that can be installed here. What do they look like? where they're centered, sidewalk treatment. So that's one of my requests for tonight, is to ask the commission to sometime before either tonight or by the next meeting, appoint one or more folks to work with us and this consultant to get this project done.
What kind of hours are you looking at? Daytime, weekends, evenings?
It's 8 to 4, Monday through Friday, weekends off. No, so what we try to do when we're working with volunteers such as yourselves, if there's work conflicts, we would try to meet early in the morning or in the evening. Like, we could even meet before this meeting. So I'm available anytime. We can meet from 6 a.m. through whatever time in the evening. And we would try to get our consultant to do that, and they're pretty good understanding that, you know, whoever's chosen doesn't work here. So really, and a lot of it can be done, you know, we do it electronically. Here's an idea, the rough draft gets shot out to everybody via email, and then sometimes we just conference call. We always need to have a face-to-face at one point, but we can do some of it that way. I don't know the actual time requirements. I don't know that it would be that onerous, because once we give them their marching orders, or we've worked to that point, well, then it's up to him or her to provide the bidding documents that note all the things you said. And then before it goes out, formal presentation to this commission.
I am retired, so I could do something like that, but I'm not really that expert on trees in terms of picking trees, and I guess you want somebody who's...
Well, we have the arborist.
John.
We have John, but I always think another viewpoint, John's outstanding at what he does,
Sure.
but some of you folks...
Well, anyway, I just
also-
want to, you know, I'd be willing to do that, and I would have the advantage of having time flexibility.
I could help out too if you needed.
That would be great, because there's another arborist's
Sure.
point along with, you know, Mr. Miller. So if the board approves you too, after tomorrow, it's going to take about a month to get this proposal back. So much to Mr. Todd's chagrin, I think we're going to be in the design in 18, and the project would go in 19 for construction.
Yeah. Not to digress too much, but it's disturbing to see that all that planting came to naught, or most of it. And how did that happen? That it was planted wrong, you know, that the wrong trees were put in.
Some of those
I mean,
trees...
we don't have the resources to really redo all this kind of stuff.
So those trees predate us, this commission. So some of those trees are 20 years old. Now, you know, when I was a young man, they were twigs in the ground. They are no longer that. So
Sure.
I don't know why certain trees were planted.
So you don't know how that happened, yeah.
So
That's what
our job is to make sure that doesn't happen,
Right.
and that future generations can enjoy.
Yeah.
Do you mind me asking who the landscape architect is?
Yes, it's Orsatti and Associates. So we've been through two, and we haven't gotten a real warm and fuzzy on a timeline. These folks are eager to give us a proposal, so I expect a quicker turnaround. And then when we get that proposal, would run it through the folks that are helping us here, and then ultimately I have to go to the Board of Commissioners to get that approved.
Steve, I have a tactical question for you. As I do the street tree survey, in order not to be redundant with something that's going to go on there, like, is there going to be a survey done in that Wayne business district?
So when you say survey, I mean, I'll have a list of what's being removed and what's being installed? Is that?
Well, I'm just wondering what.
I
I'll
think
give
what
you
we need are
that.
the boundaries, and then Matt will take that out of scope for his project.
I'll
so we
give you the street limits. I can shoot that over to you tomorrow. That's no problem. It's-
Yeah, that's
The
great.
Wayne District Overlay District is very well defined, and that's where this whole project takes place pretty much.
That's great. Okay.
And also, just to add, so Gretchen Grobel from the Conservancy's been talking with the township about recycling containers in downtown Wayne. And Chris Todd has also said, hey, is this something we can add into this project? So it may expand a little bit from its original concept.
Okay. Good to know. Okay. So, folks, that brings us to old business. I think in general there aren't Any updates, except for Jack? I think you wanted to say something about Philippone.
Yeah, John gave us a presentation of the estimates for that Philippone Connor track to get the vines removed and the wood, the dead wood out, and I think it was actually a planting proposal. But verbally, that's not going to, he said something would be coming forth in writing on that?
That's my understanding, sir.
Okay. So you'll be following up on that then? Make sure we get that?
He will follow, he'll be here next month and he will follow up on that. And that's a tool for this Shade Tree Committee, if you so wished, that could be one of your budget requests or a portion thereof. So
Right.
it's important that you have something to move with by September,
Yeah.
if you wish to.
Okay. Okay, so you'll remind him that we haven't gotten that?
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, good. So folks, that brings us to number 8, which is the hazardous trees, and we have a package that describes why each one is being removed. Are there any concerns? I know we don't have John here tonight, so we can't say whether they've been reviewed or not, but I know typically
He
he
reviews
does
them all.
review them. Yeah.
No, they don't come on the list till he reviews them, right? No.
Eileen,
Yeah.
you need to go back to the 2018 goals in old business.
Okay.
You wanted to talk about the Be Green proposal?
Next month.
Okay.
But thanks, Trish.
But Trish, one thing, last month we asked to put on the agenda about having an archives for Shade Tree. So could we get that on the agenda for next month? And then, any information you could provide us regarding what we have in terms of an archives for Shade Tree now. You said we have I think you told me all we know is you have a file, a Shade Tree file, right?
Sorry, Mr. Miller, so we have past minutes, we have past agendas,
Right.
past packets.
Yeah.
I don't,
Okay, well, this commission's getting a lot more active now, and we had the, we're doing our tree census, so that is a form of documents. We have our charter. Then we get various to me, my feeling is that in order for us to function, and especially in a historical sense, just like we're talking about today and we're talking about all that's gone past with the Big Tree Fund, okay? You're talking about, we would have no answers to how those trees got misplanted, okay? Things like that, if you have archives, a good archive system, you know what you've done, why you've done it, how you did it, the documents that supported that. And if we're going to expand our function as a Shade Tree Commission, my feeling is we would need to have a little bit more sophisticated archives. I know we've gotten correspondence in the past, and we have we don't even have a procedure. Who answers the correspondence? Is that correspondence stored? We just ignore it.
so to that end, if this commission receives correspondence and it becomes part of the packet, so for most boards and commissions, to a point, the archive are the previous agendas. So you can search back years on those agendas. So in the packet, say for Planning Commission, you can go back X years and see a project, and you'll see its various iterations and all the review letters, as well as the minutes of the Planning Commission or the Stormwater Management Advisory Committee. So that's a very defined process on our website. It's very easy to search for a specific committee, commission, or board to find that. Now, as far as correspondence, if correspondence comes to this commission, so we would normally put that in the packet, so it's located there. Your response, if you so choose to do so in writing, would also be in the packet.
Right.
But on the website, under Shade Tree, which is what we do with other commissions, we have the ability to post certain things. So we could have a topic or a title line of tree survey. And in that, you know, Mr. Golis could send to Trish and say, hey, here's my first portion of that. Can you please post this? Then there might be, as you work on a master street tree plan, 2018 draft of the master tree plan, and that gets posted, and that stays on that website.
Right.
And if you go to, we have one on Villanova University that went back to conditional use and all that. So we have an ability to do that. We don't have a central archive, so to speak, but I think we can meet
For
the
shade
needs.
tree, you mean?
For any specific topic. So the way that the township holds files, we have Laserfiche, we have some paper files. More recent projects are all stored electronically. We have them. We actually
Sure.
have a basement
Yeah.
with paper files.
Yeah, no,
But I think we can meet your needs moving forward. We know we have the agendas and minutes covered and anything that's in your packet.
right.
But using the Shade Tree website, and if you're going to be bringing more traffic to that website and making people aware of what you guys do, which is a great thing, then we can compartmentalize that very easily with your charter, your initiatives. So the charter doesn't have to just be part of the minutes. It can be noted on the website as, go to Shade Tree, and there it is, 2018 charter. So if you want to
That's what I'm talking
work
about.
offline with Trish, members of the committee, I think we can meet your needs.
Right. And that's basically what I'm trying to, what do we have? How do we, I don't think most of us would know how to access a lot of that stuff. Well, if we eventually get information on our canopy, and a lot of this stuff obviously doesn't get to the packet. I don't know if the charter, was the final charter in the packet?
I know iterations were.
Yeah, iterations were, but
Yeah.
I don't know whether the final version was.
Then when you do that, you know, we'll post that. But like I say,
Yeah.
if you go to the website, we can have an area for canopy, charter, and then
Right.
that's memorialized, so we
That's
can
what
do
we're
that.
trying- yeah.
Our
So-
website can do that.
Yeah, so that's what I'm trying to get is how we can use our existing tools to preserve the information of the things we're doing for not only continued use while they're active, but also historically to refer to them again if questions come up later, if half of our commission overturns, as it probably will in the next few years. Hopefully not, but the way things go, it would be helpful.
And one thing I find very helpful when someone comes back for a second round with us is to look at the YouTube videos, because the YouTube videos have captured every minute of every second of every Shade Tree meeting. And so there's a lot of, that's just rich archival stuff that's there. Now, you have to search for it, but if you're a commissioner, you sort of remember where that came up in the meeting. And so, anyway, that's.
Yeah.
If the commission wishes to do a subcommittee, or if I know you're the communications person, gladly have you come in, sit with Trish and our website person, and we could lay out those different areas.
Yeah.
And then it's just a matter of populating them as things come. And this board tells us, hey, make sure this goes here, and we can do that.
Yeah.
So just shoot Trish an email and say, hey, I'd like to come in and speak to you and Jim Doling, and we can work on that together. And then once we have something you like I say, it's just a matter of posting it to that, which I have no ability to do so, but Trish does.
Okay.
Maybe along that line, Jack, since I'm the communication person now, it
Yeah.
seems, I could send out like sort of, as Steve was alluding to, some sort of like subheadings under the Shade Tree
Uh-huh.
category on the website.
Yeah.
And all of us could make sure those subheadings would be almost like, folders, if you will.
Sure, folders,
that we
yeah.
would put certain pieces of
I was hoping
information
this would attract your attention, because a lot of the stuff you're doing would be perfect for this.
Yeah.
Not only
Yeah.
that, to be
Like
in
some of
it.
the articles that our
Yeah.
three little committees trying to
Yeah,
put together
sure.
on, substantive
Right,
topics right
yeah,
now.
yeah.
And- Okay, well, I'll try and circulate that email then.
Right. And we could all learn how eventually what's there and how to
Right.
negotiate it, how to get around it,
Right.
and how to add to it. Right now, some of us know parts of it, some of us don't know others. So I'm just trying to get us coordinated so we can all contribute to that, whatever we're doing, and we have a kind of a coherent record of what we're doing. Because we're doing a lot more. Also, I mean, before this commission was formed, all we did was review plans, basically.
Yeah, so that's, so
Rather than
great
other
comment,
experience.
Jack, and Ginny, thank you so much for taking that on. I think that'll be perfect. Anything else before we adjourn the meeting?
Do we need it anywhere in the minutes, or is it because I missed last week, the amount of money that is approved for the communication flyer? Is it definitive?
That should be from our last meeting. Trish, will you just make sure that you capture that actually in the meeting minutes?
So if we had an email discussion on this, so I told you I could process a purchase order for this, so I just need a company name so we can set them up as a vendor, and it would go through the process.
Okay.
Okay, that's
Because
great.
the purchase order process for, in this case, would be myself, Bill White, and the township manager.
Okay,
So I need to have certain information
Sure.
to be able to do that.
yep.
And Steve, it was great to see you. We missed you.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
And Steve, did you want somebody there tomorrow with you, or?
If you are available, fantastic. Tomorrow is like a pre-scope meeting where I give them a basic scope, have them submit back. But I would love, if you're available, I would love to have you and get your input on that. Or you can wait till we get the proposal back, which this commission will see, and then we're going to sit down with the gentleman from Orsatti and go into a little better.
And would we be able to, if there was different trees available, or we thought were
We
better?
wouldn't even be at that level
Oh, we
tomorrow.
weren't. Okay.
It's more.
No, but
Right,
going
'cause-
forward, we would have some input?
Yeah, one of my line items is they have to work, I was assuming the Shade Tree would join in, so I said they have to work with the Shade Tree Commission, arborists, and staff towards picking the appropriate species and locations of trees.
Yeah, so, yeah, I don't think you need me there then, or,
Next one for sure.
perfect.
Okay, and folks, my apologies, I forgot about public comment. You know, I think because we had it interspersed. But Laura, would you like to say something?
Laura Luker of the Radnor Conservancy. All great information being put out here, and everybody's got great ideas, and it was really nice to have Bill here to explain a lot of things. And I think what I just want to do is end the evening on what I feel it was the most important thing that came out of this meeting is the hard work that it's going to be putting together this budget. And really having you guys do some offline type of work together to really figure out the needs for this budget. And it seems to me, I would suggest you guys working with either Steve or with Bob and with Steve McNeils as well, because there are going to be so many trees that are going to need to be taken down because they're hazards in the right-of-ways of the township. And that's not really thought through very well year to year. You can get maybe a baseline, we talked a little bit about this, by looking at past removals, and that is record. But putting that into the budget, obviously putting in more money for replanting, and also putting into the budget the understanding that even though this is kind of public works maybe, but there's such a overlap between public works and the arborist. It just needs to be beefed up somehow. And I don't know, I really wish that we could have some hard talks and understand their side and what they can only do or what they would like to do and what we would like them to do. And so
I can give you some information on that.
I
So,
know you probably
I
can
mean,
give a
so
ton of
Public Works is
information.
not staffed, like Haverford Township, you'd notice, so they have tree crews. We don't have tree crews. So all our work is usually subbed out, and it's a very reactive basis. We don't have the ability to be proactive. I'm not speaking for Steve McNeils. I want everybody to understand he's our Director of Public Works. That's his show, and he runs that. I'm just telling you from past experience, I want to make sure that everybody understands it's not for a lack of trying. it's not the way we're set up. And like I say, Steve McNellis is your Director of Public Works. He works on these things. But I felt I had to jump in here to sort of stick up for them, because that's just not the way we're geared from a personnel standpoint, is to have these crews that do this work. We don't have that.
So the question would be is, when the trees need to be removed and budgeting, is that money, as we heard, it's coming out of the general fund? So, and is that really coming out of the general fund for Public Works, or is it coming out of the general fund for shade tree when they're removed?
That is a general fund, and it falls under the Public Works budget.
Okay, and is that budget figured out amongst staff?
Yes.
Okay, and are you guys looking into the real need that there are going to be a lot more trees coming down?
I'm going to have to defer to the Director of Public Works on that. That's his this year.
All right, so anyways, see how it's really confusing, how these things are all kind of, they overlap, and who takes on what budget and whose responsibility and all that, but.
You know, we all work as a team, so Public Works, engineering, we're not real compartmentalized. We help out each other whenever we have to. We communicate throughout the day. So some things are very specifically Public Works, some things are very specifically engineering, but we are a team, so we don't back away and say, oh no, that's yours, or that's not mine. We work very well together.
Yeah. I want to say also one idea for the budget, and we can talk about this more in August, is how do we increase our revenues? And that could be the idea of grants. You know, so there's an opportunity too, if we want to increase our expenses.
Thank you for reminding me, because that's part of the proposal to the landscape architect, to look up grants for that project.
Yeah, no, that would be great, and we'll leverage whatever he finds.
Okay, well, that's really all that I wanted to say. But
Yeah.
anyways,
Yeah, and we appreciate.
I know
if
last
the
year it was not really thought through, and I think it really needs to, with all what's happening with climate change and trees coming down and
I
all
think
that.
if we start early, and I'm open to, if the Conservancy and Chanticleer want to take a look at our budget, maybe they have a better idea or some benchmarks as to whether it's realistic, or can they also be advocates along with us to the BOC? We'll gladly take any metrics or
Yeah.
data that you have available that will help us make a good
And
argument.
I really think the best information is coming from the staff,
Mm-hmm.
from both engineering and Public Works, and the arborist,
I think
and Bill White.
I think everybody at the township knows that there's a lot to be done,
Yeah.
probably. But just to get to Lower Merion or Haverford to have a tree crew would probably be millions just to get them going.
Well, I don't think it's going to happen, but
Yeah.
but I think we need to have money in the bank for when we have to remove trees that have fallen.
You heard what the manager said, what he thought we needed for the next 20 years.
Yeah.
So.
And that's right.
So, okay.
Okay, thank
Good
you.
night.
Okay, thanks, everybody.
Wait,